Thanks for tuning in to Everything Catholic again. And as always, I hope all of you are going to learn a lot from this one. It's going to be quite long, but I can assure you there are a lot of great lessons you can take from this one. Only 2 clips this time, but both clips are about the same duration, roughly 10 minutes each. So without wasting any more time, let's start with this.
When we experience interior aridity, desolation, darkness, resistance, trouble, uphill battles, resting in us, allowing us through our exercise of the virtues in these difficult moments to snatch from his hand chastisements drawn upon the earth by other souls, and at the same time to perfect us in uniting ourselves more intimately with him and amass more merit. Do you think that the great saints who attain the heights of holiness and that at the same time were harassed by the devil were displeasing to God because God allowed the devil to harass them? Quite the opposite. St. Padre Pio, when he was physically left in a pool of blood by the devil, after he already attained the heights of holiness, was asked by one of the confreres, why does God allow this to happen to you? And he replies in his epistles, I have all of his 4-volume epistle set. He says, so that I can offer up this for the salvation of souls. The suffering God allows the devil to impose upon me, I offer up for the salvation of souls. I am enabled to grow in holiness more in intimate holiness with God, amass more merit. So these are the 3 reasons Padre Pio gave. And he knew that. And that's why he welcomed it. He never said, God, stop it, take the devil away. He understood exactly why God was allowing this. He called on his angel one time, I remember, and he was a little bit, with his Italian humor, irritated with him. He was being beaten by the devil one time, and he looked up and he called upon his angel for assistance. And his angel's praying to God, singing hymns. And he looks at his angels and said, why are you singing hymns and I'm here suffering? You're supposed to be helping me. And the angel basically said to him, and this is, I'm paraphrasing from his epistle, your sufferings offered up with your intention are saving souls from hell, and they're glorifying God and increasing my accidental glory. And I'm glorifying God for the glory you've given me. Padre Pio says, well, that's great, but come down here and help me now. I need your help. And he did. The angel eventually did and helped him. But you see the paradox? Satan becomes an instrument in God's hand for the advancement of the souls in God's will who love him. You may say Satan is the left hand of God. To his own unawares, he's doing God's will. Now, certainly those people who do not love God and are harassed by Satan use it for their own damnation because they don't turn to God like the saints do. And God will never allow a soul to be tested beyond its strength. Know that I will never allow the demons to tempt you beyond your strength. If I allow them to test you, it is for your own good. For I never place a soul in battle for it to perish. Rather, I first measure its strength. And everyone's strength is different. First, I measure its strength. Then impart to it my grace. And only then do I place it in battle. So see, before God allows Satan to test us, troubles to assail us, and evil to beset us, he first measures our individual strength, which is unique to each and every human being. Number 2, then he gives us his grace. And only after he's done both, he puts us in battle. After stating, first I measure its strength, then I impart my grace, only then do I place it in battle. And if the souls happen to fall, if some souls happen to fall, it is because they have failed to remain united to me in prayer. That is huge. This is the blueprint on how to defeat Satan. Constant prayer, a daily steadfast regimen of prayer is essential. I gave in one of my talks about a year ago why most people keep falling back into sin. It's because they don't have a consistent daily regimen of prayer. They have prayer, but it's not consistent. It's up and down according to what comes each day. If it's a difficult day, they don't pray at all. They're too worried or they're absorbed in their problems. And that's a distraction from Satan. And if everything's easy and fine, they don't pray either because now they can do everything they want, go fishing, go sailboating and do this and that. And then they go, see the paradox of life is when we have all the time in the world, we have no time. And when we have all these troubles, like seeds that were thrown among thorns, we're choked by the anxieties of life and by the troubles that the devil puts upon us. So the devil hits us in both directions with consolation and desolation. And this is why the will that transcends the highs and lows of our external existence is under God's command. Not the intellect, not the memory, the will. The will commands the intellect. The will commands the memory. Satan can enter the intellect and the memory without your consent, but the will can cast him out. And that's why the will is the greatest of the three faculties and the repository of all the acts done in God's divine will that turn to your favor on Judgment Day. So the will commands the intellect and the memory to make time for God every day, to set aside time to have a consistent, daily, steadfast, regiment prayer life. If the will does not do that, there's no way you're living in God's divine will. If you are not following a daily, consistent regimen of prayer, you are not living in God's divine will. There's no way you can do that. You can say, well, I come and go, I pray once in a while, and when I'm in those prayer moments, I invoke God's will, so I'm living in it. Well, my question to you is that really living? Living implies continuity. Visiting does not. I would say you're visiting God's will. You're not living in it. I never place a soul in battle for it to perish. Rather, I measure its strength, impart my grace, and only then do I place it in battle. And if some souls happen to fall, it is because they have failed to remain united to me in prayer. No longer sensibly experiencing my love, here it's desolation, darkness. They don't experience the consolation anymore. This is where they're feeling resistance. No longer sensibly experiencing my love, they go about begging for love from other creatures. Isn't that so true? We feel abandoned. This person took his love or her love away from me. That person rejected me. They're no longer paying attention to me, so I have to replace their love that they took away with someone else's love. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's psychologically a sound approach to not sulk in the corner and feel unloved when people have abandoned you, but rather go out, talk to people, meet people. But that's not replacing God, you see. You're speaking and finding God in and through others. That's one approach. Another approach is when there is no one else available, you have no choice but to turn to God, like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, when the apostles fell asleep more than once. So Jesus says, no longer sensibly experiencing my love, these people go about begging for love from other creatures. Whereas I alone could fulfill and satisfy the human heart. Such souls do not let themselves be guided by the sure path of obedience, but trust more in their own human judgment than in the judgment of those who guide them in my stead. So what wonder is it if they fall? Here the Lord is saying, there are many people in the church today that answer to no one but themselves. They badmouth the Pope, they badmouth the magisterium, they think their wits will save them, and they will end up in hell on their butts. But I didn't know, but I thought this, but I thought that. And they end up in hell on their butts. The majority of Christians today do not look to the church to obey it. They look to it either to confirm their own instinction or their own instincts or inhibitions or judgments, thoughts, opinions, and then they agree with it when they concur with these. The minority of the people today do what Jesus asks them. How can I say that? Just look at the statistics. They don't lie. How many people go to church on Sunday in the Catholic Church? About a quarter. A quarter of the pie goes to confession and communion. That in itself is a statement. The vast majority, they're not putting God at the center of their life. And it's been like this for a long time. But this will change when God will visit us very soon, and through his Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity that will express himself both externally and internally through fire, will thin the ranks, leaving a remnant of meek individuals to inherit the earth.
And the second clip in this video will be on our crosses in life, and I can relate to this in so many ways. Oftentimes before, I blame God for allowing this and that to happen in my life, failing to fully embrace the lessons I've gained from those pains.
There was a person that had come to me several years ago, among others, that for about 10 years was going through an interior struggle. And this person was often saying, if only this had happened in my life, things would be different. Or if this had happened, this would not have been the case today. Or if I didn't make this bad decision, I would not be in the situation I am. In other words, this person was regretting a lot of regrets of the bad things that happened to them, oftentimes at his or her own hand in the past. If only Had this not been, I should not have a lot of regret, a lot of guilt, and this was intensifying the darkness tremendously. This person could not advance in faith or in spirituality because this person was stuck in a state of depression, chronic depression. They could not grow in prayer, had no neat desire to pray. They felt abandoned by God, could not trust in God, and could not allow God to forgive him or her. This made it impossible for this person to find or to get along with a spouse. They were isolated. And this is exactly what the devil wanted. The devil had this person by the throat, and they had no idea that the devil was choking them. So how could this person move forward? You see, this person, we're going to address this from a psychological perspective, was looking at if only in the past as something that was essential to the present, upon which the present depended, and were rejecting the precise shape of the cross Jesus had offered them in the past and is offering them in the present. By saying, if only I did this in the past, they are effectively rejecting the specific shape of the cross Jesus offered them in the past, and he's offering them now. You see, if they had simply accepted what Jesus had given them, they could have said, I have been crucified with Christ, as Paul says in Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus faced a great temptation, if only temptation. Had I only done this, let's say Jesus' humanity, not his divinity, would have said, if only I would have approached Judas a different way, he would not have been lost. If only I would have said to those 100 disciples about my body and blood, if I said it in a more delicate way, maybe they wouldn't have left. If there were a lot of if-onlys Jesus could have gone back to and said, if only I did this, if only. Jesus faced his supreme if-only temptation in the Garden of Gethsemane, but he triumphed over it by accepting the twisting and turning wood of the cross according to the fashion of the Father's design. Jesus did not design the cross. He accepted it as it was presented to him by the Father. You see, from the cross and the grave, there's obedience to the Father's will. There's love, trust, surrender to the Father. And Jesus turned this attitude this person had that came to me. If only I did this. If only I didn't have this cross in my past. If only I didn't have to deal with this bad memory or bad action of mine that's cost me the future of the rest of my life. If only this person followed Jesus' example by taking up the cross, not patterned by the person, but by God's providence, and followed him, the depression would dissipate. It will be the beginning of the end of the darkness. Remember, we are not authorized to shape our own cross. We are not. We have no authority by God to choose the dimensions, the weight, the size, the shape of our cross. We have no choice, and we do not have the authority to choose. God chooses that for us. And that includes our defects, our sins, however great they are, and our good, charitable choices and actions in life. It includes the whole gamut of good and evil, our cross. So the cross that we receive is never like anyone else's cross. And it's not supposed to be. We don't become a saint by constantly seeking freedom from all uncomfortable constraints and irritations. This is part of the devil's trick. Oh, you're not fully free from uncomfortabilities, from difficulties, from troubles. So that means you have to live in constant regret of your past. That's the devil's voice. That does not make us a saint. Freeing ourselves from uncomfortable constraints and irritations or troubles, that does not make you a saint. As with any good work of art, the edges and the limits give life to its beautiful form. All holiness is about the contours, the dimensions, the edges, the right form that God decides. Grace transforms. Grace conforms. Grace reforms. Grace informs our life with the form of Christ's cross. Grace is infinitely superior to evil and can not only reverse evil, but can avail itself thereof to bring about not just the good that previously existed, but a greater good, so much so that had that evil not existed, we would not experience this great grace and great goodness. Felix culpa, happy fault. Thank God there was original sin, because through it, we now inherit a greater glory that we would not have had there been no original sin. It's great for those who are saved. It's hellish for those who are lost. So it's a 50-50 gamble. And it's not a gamble, really. It's a decision that's made throughout tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of choices in life. We have a choice to be saved to the last breath we take. So this person's if only in the past were hemmed in a frame within which God can paint his masterpiece. They didn't see that. The devil was keeping this person blind from seeing that your past failures are the tapestry, the raw material, the essential means by which God can paint his masterpiece. And I told this person, did you not know that some of the greatest saints were the greatest sinners? Is that a coincidence? We become holy by allowing God to frame our life according to and patterned after the measure, the width, the height, the length, the depth, the form, the shape of the cross he permits through providence in our lives that include our evils and our goods. He foresees it all. Some people have this crazy idea that, oh, God did not expect me to commit this grave sin in the past and therefore my life is doomed. As if God is not omniscient. Of course he foresaw that. God foresees everything. And the fact that he foresaw all the grave evils you did and permits you still to be holy is proof positive that he's using that for your betterment and for the betterment of all. Remember Maximilian Kolbe in the bunker of Auschwitz. He didn't ask for that cross. You think St. Maximilian Kolbe said, oh God, I'm praying that I end up in the gas chamber wherever I'm die by lethal injection or starve to death, one of the two. No, he never expected that. But what did he do? This is the attitude of the saints. He allowed God to frame his life, cutting his edges and painting away. Even in his starvation bunker, he was able to create a work of art the church would later canonize. And that would bequeath to him 2 crowns of martyrdom and virginity. But not all hardships and sufferings are willed by God for our life. We know sometimes we are the carpenter of our own cross. But even there, God enters and can use that like original sin. Suppose you have a broken relationship, and this has come to me quite often, and the person is regretting it, that I should not have behaved as I did in the past. I kind of drove it into the ground after repeated bad attitudes and behaviors or whatever. I feel guilty, I feel guilty, I feel guilty. Much of discernment is the art of discerning limits, of judging what the proper limits are that are needed to protect your primary vocation and commitment in life. And when you come to your limits, then you discover your boundary. And that involves failure. You can't know your limit until you hit failure. It's like an athlete. He doesn't know his potential until he rivals it with other athletes better than him and fails in the process. Then he becomes better and he expands his potential. Our souls are expansive too. So when we face trials or hardships, we need to learn our limits. And that's what failure is about. That's one of the great gifts of life's crosses. They expose our weakness and limits. The cross that Christ shapes exposes our weakness and limits. It's what I think Jesus means when he said to St. Paul, my grace is sufficient, for power is made perfect in weakness. Now you understand that meaning? Paul was pushed to his limit, and he discovered his weakness. He said, I can't do this. I'm insufficient. And Christ said, that's exactly where I want you. Because now you're discovering your limit, and in failing, not being able to go beyond this point, you expand through my grace. So my grace is sufficient in you, for power is made perfect in weakness. Power is made perfect because of, in our exposed weakness, our limits are exposed by the trials we face. We learn what are the delimiting borders of our vocation, of our potential, of our calling in life, in which we are to live out God's will. If you look at a river, it runs very fast, right? Oftentimes it's rapidly and powerful, wears down the rocks. And the river runs swift and powerful and clean because it has sharp edges that define it. The river didn't start running fast all of a sudden. Over the course of decades, it formed this bed, and the rocks have conformed to the power of the water shearing its edges to now make the river flow more quickly. Without this riverbed, the sharp edges, it would diffuse into murky swamp filled with deadly, probably poisonous creatures. So you see, the limit are the rocks of the water's expanses. And the water constantly pressing against those limits enables it to move more quickly over time. But we have to discern what are the crosses that God wants us to embrace in life, in the present. The crosses of the past we necessarily embrace. We have to, because they're given to us by God's providence, even if it's through our own goodwill or bad will. They're nonetheless a result of God's providence. But in the present, we have to pray for discernment. To discern, there was a prayer, I think it was by a man named Reinhold Niebuhr, when something like, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's discernment. God, grant me courage to change the things I can. That's discernment. And God, grant me wisdom to know the difference. That's discernment. So we are to avail ourselves of the grace of God that is right at our fingertips today. Don't look in the past and meditate on it to the point of depression, but rather look at it through modern lenses, through the work of grace in you today that is availing itself of all past, good and bad, in order to make you that perfect masterpiece that God has intended from all eternity.
That's all for this time, and I hope all of you have learned quite a bit from this video. And just like always, if you have any suggestion or constructive feedback for me, please let me know in the comments below. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.